2020, and that's where I got the virus coming through the airport.
Oh no!
I got the coronavirus Friday the 13th, March 13th.
Wow.
It happens when you come down to the dirty South.
It's funny because right about that time, I think between LAX and Atlanta, I saw at the airport, I saw maybe 3 people with masks. Like no one was even wearing masks then. And I was in this huge line at the airport to come back in Atlanta. And I was thinking to myself, I thought, God, if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it in this huge crowd of people who are coming and going from all around the world. And sure enough,
let's do this. Let's get the conversation started because, so James, I'm going to warn you right off the bat. First of all, welcome everyone. The weekly briefing, Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern time zone. I'm here joined with Tim Thompson and our special guest, James from Laundry. James, so good to have you here. We're going to keep this to 30 minutes because 30 minutes is the only time we have if we're going to do something weekly. So we're going to keep it quick. So James, I'll just warn you in advance as we're picking your brain. We'll definitely be looking for that short answer, and then we'll pick it up and then throw it back to you to say, hey, give us more information, elaborate on that. So just bear with us if we're keeping you on.
It goes fast, James. 30 minutes goes very fast when the camera's on.
You picked the wrong guy if you want short answers.
I know. I don't know what we were thinking. But hey, we got a good little turnout here. So let me kick it off first by just saying, James, welcome, and can you introduce yourself and tell us your role at Laundry?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thanks guys for having me. My name is James Sweigert, and I am the managing director at Laundry, full service production company, design, animation, and live action production.
Well, that was quick. Wow, you caught me off guard. That was so fast.
I do follow direction well.
Well, this is what's cool. So, Tim, you and I both had this, I think, moment this past week when we were both, each talking with a certain client, so an owner of a studio or a production company. And there was this moment when we were talking about they've really grown in brand direct, working directly for brands. And one thing led to another, and we said, let's talk about this week. And James, really appreciate you being willing to come on here and talk to us. I have a theory that there's so much opportunity out there that honestly, it's easy to talk about this and not feel like you're giving away competitive secrets, because there are so many people out there that need what our industry offers. But again, thank you for being willing to show up and discuss this. Let's start here. I'm going to just add this context. So of the studios and production companies in our community, sure, a lot of them work in entertainment. So these are the TV networks, right? The Promax world, as we call it. It's challenged. It's not really growing. And there's new competitors every year and the margins are tighter. Then there's advertising. And the advertising agency game, as we know, still very vibrant, but is it growing? Not really. It's also having its challenges, and that AOR model that so many agencies lived off of for years is being challenged, but it's also becoming more competitive. And so we have this space out there we call direct to brand that I believe, and Tim, I know you do, that it's really where the future opportunities lie. I'm curious just to hear from you first off, James. Would you agree with that statement, and why?
For the most part, I would agree with that. I think that, in just a little context, I started out as a graphic designer, had my own graphic design company before the desktop publishing revolution, where we could actually design and animate for standard definition television, and when I came on board at Fuel back in the 90s. So I've been watching this for a long time, because I started out, when I was in high school, I had my own graphic design company. So I was doing commercial art at a very early age. And so I've seen a lot of trends. I've seen a lot of fluctuation. I think that the only little part I would disagree with was that the ad world is decreasing. And here's what I mean by that, because there's a little bit longer explanation. I'll try to keep it brief. But what we've seen is we've seen this thing where all of a sudden the ad agencies through the 90s and the 2000s were trying to create production companies within the ad agency, right? We saw that trend.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden, a new person comes in, usually a CFO, who looks at the numbers and is like, this is way too big overhead. Let's just outsource to the laundries and the tools and the, partisans of the world. And so then they got, they were able to downsize the overhead. But then what happens is, and then, they lose all the amazing production people, go back and look for freelance jobs. But what's happened is two things have happened. The direct to brand they're starting to build their own internal agencies, right? So they're starting to absorb from the agency world, but simultaneously, just like that lesson that was learned by the ad agencies that like, wait, do you want to be in the ad agency business, or do you want to be in the media buy business, or do you want to be in the production company business, right? Because those are different worlds. And so what I've seen happen with a lot of brands, not all brands, some brands have it down and they absorb the right people from the agency world. But what I've been seeing is they don't understand it, because what's missing, and it's an integral link, is that account manager role on the brand side, right? Yeah. That's the missing link. And so because what I have agency EPs that are now they're on a brand, right? Working directly for a brand. They've got their producers and everything below them. But what they're doing is that EP is having to answer not to an account or work with an account person with their quote unquote client. They're having to work directly with the CMO. And there's that missing level of understanding of that buffer that's needed in order to execute great creative, right? Because the CMO is listening to the CEO or the COO who's saying, make the logo bigger, right? And that's not necessarily the effective route of communicating the product or service that's being marketed.
Okay, so this actually leads to very nicely into my first kind of big question. Why even sell direct to brand? Like, what's the big win? Even if you're happy in Promax land, or you're happy just working for ad agencies, if you were going to make an argument to somebody that says, hey, here's why it's time to put on the big boy, big girl pants and go start working with brands directly, why? What's the win?
The budgets are better.
Okay, that's a good start.
The budgets are better in our experience, but this is why I also didn't want to agree with your point about the shrinking ad agency world, because we are still seeing. I mean, I'm really lucky because I have amazing creatives in my corner. The laundry team is doing the best work we've done in 17 years. We have one of the most talented teams. So we are. And PJ Richardson and Tony Liu, that PJ with his Instagram, which you guys have seen blow up in the last year, that's one of the single most important marketing tools that we have, is his personal Instagram and his prolific postings every day. And so, the creative matters, right? And I can talk about that in another conversation, but. So we are attracting amazing work. And so we're in a luxury position because we had such a great year in 2020, because nobody was shooting TV commercials. They were all doing animation, and some people were new to animation. So we pivoted quickly, and not only to our direct to brand, which a lot of it, for those of you that are listening, a lot of that is because we had opened up a San Francisco office a few years ago to address our tech friends, all our agency friends who were going into the tech sector. And so that opened up a big direct to brand pipeline for us.
Let me ask a follow-up question, too, because you said the budgets are better, which is obviously pretty significant. And that was a very crisp answer, by the way. Thank you. Do you find that the way that you're positioned when you speak to a brand, is there more respect, more appreciation for your expertise because you're being viewed more as the creative partner that we all kind of hope to be, rather than just being the order taker? Like, oh, laundry, we're a brand. If we're going to hire you directly, we almost expect you to lead us. We expect you to bring a specialty and an expertise. Is that another win in that equation?
Yeah, yes and no. A lot of our agency friends are now acting as those brand representatives. So we have history. There's a way of working that there's a familiarity, right? There's a shorthand there. So for a lot of our contacts on the direct to brand side, there are 1,000 conversations we don't need to have, right? And 1,000 we can have. If they're less savvy, 100%. They're looking to us, and Jason Fletcher, who's your awesome sidekick over there, he knows this too, because he gets to look at the kind of inner machinations of laundry. We actually do behave a little bit more like an agency than a traditional production company for a lot of these brands. And so we offer full soup to nuts. So, the agency world, and because we're doing great creative, we get to see better budgets and the bigger budgets in that world. But sometimes they're coming to us for little things, and because the agency's taking a piece of the pie, right, it makes it a little tighter. And we're in a luxury position that we get to pass on some of the stuff that just like, we do a feasibility study on every opportunity that comes to our doorstep. And what we do is we look at, like, creatively, is there merit? Does it fit into our production schedule? Do we have the resources to put on it? And how's the schedule? We look at all of the components, the 4 components. And if it's not a fit for laundry and we can't give it our best, we'll pass, because it's so hard to get somebody to your doorstep, but when they leave mad because you didn't give them the love, it's really hard to get them back. And then they tell 10 people how they were not stoked about that agency. Yeah.
James, so
Yeah.
an observation that I made, it sounds like you're kind of confirming too, where I agree with you, the evolution since the 90s, where agencies, brands started trying to do production in-house. And I do think now they're leaving production out of house. They know there are specialties and specialists out there that they want to do things with, and the variety is better. But it feels like the brands, let's say the larger brands, have moved their agency services in-house. So the media buys and that kind of stuff, just because the media buy is so different now than it was back in days of billboards and television commercials and newspaper ads. So the media buy is different, it's easier to do. And when the agency work is in-house, what they're doing is some of the mechanical agency work in-house and maybe some of the marketing strategy in-house, but they still need a collaborator. And we really are becoming a hybrid model, especially if you're in the production agency space, you're becoming the hybrid model of, hey, I'm going to take over some of that responsibility and some of that strategy you're asking for, in addition to executing the good creative work. I guess that's the observation. The question I have is, like, what's the pivot like? So imagine just being a production company that's curious about getting into this brand space. When you pitch, is it different? How do I present myself differently? Or what's the transition or the pivot like to elevate into and expand into the brand space?
That's a great question. And I think that there are a lot of answers to that. I think where we've been successful. Oh, I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't turn my phone off.
It's my favorite song.
Killing it. All right. Sorry about that. Let me get
No
you guys back. I lost everybody here. Sorry, guys. I've got you guys in a tiny little window here, but to answer that question, how do we, behave differently? I think, the projects are all different. Like what we're being approached for from the brand side, there's a variety of different, there's kind of, hey, this more explainer, educational type video. Hey, this, like with the Coca-Cola piece we just did, which was basically just a blank canvas, just go make crazy cool stuff that gamers will check out and sit through, that was a fun one, because that was just, the guys got to go, the whole creative team got to go bonkers on that. And so basically, long story short, the way we approach it is, I'm going to call it just kind of a sophisticated offering and just a way of communicating to what they're looking for. And you kind of touched on this a second ago, Tim, is what they're looking for is they're looking for someone who has expertise, someone who can take a project, elevate the initiative, right, and get it across the goal line where it's on brand and has, production value, So I think that's the key. And so the way we, I'm going to back up.
Well, I'll say this, James, I think you're making a certain assumption, but there's even this need to understand the initiative. Like, can you understand the initiative? And therefore, can you come alongside and help? And the pitch process feels like it's more about understanding and pushing out there what you do understand about the initiative, and therefore what you would do as an agency. What would your strategy be with them as an agency? And showing that work, opposed to assuming that the entire initiative is figured out and your job is only execution. If you walk in there with a pitch deck that just talks about only your execution, then that initiative and that desire and the overall idea of being a creative partner, you've commoditized yourself. You've walked away and put up a shield of like, and kind of said, I don't know how to do that part. Just call me when you need pretty pictures.
Right.
So I do think there's a little bit more of a push and collaboration. The other thing I'd say is the need inside of a brand to know that there's something on the outside, right? So they have all the money, but they are looking for the outsider's perspective. And people that are, trending or have done work for other brands does seem to kind of give them that confidence of like, oh yeah, we're in the right space. So I have a feeling that once you kind of tap into that idea of understanding that relationship, that you're going to be able to present that part better.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little distracted because I lost all my windows, but I've got you back where I can see you.
You're good.
I've never been.
I try to cover for you there.
I've never been good at on camera looking straight into the camera. I like looking at people because I'm a people person. But I think that to answer your question, because people come at us, even in the network side, sometimes they're coming to us like, can you guys create scripts? Can you, sometimes that's the ask. We don't always. It depends what who the brand is and what their resources are internally, because sometimes we're actually asked to ideate and concept very early on, and we get involved sometimes even in strategy conversations, right, and doing landscape studies. And that we're also find that from the brand side, that can sometimes be the ask, again, depending on their internal resources or their internal agency resources or production company resources, right? Because all these brands have an art director, most of them have a creative director, but really to do the heavy lifting of script writing, and that's copywriting, not all of them have those resources internally. And so the most important thing for me to do is to listen on that first conversation. I do again, I mentioned that we do a feasibility study. So my whole thing is about information gathering. What are your needs? What is it they're looking for? What is the objective? And then am I the right company to supply that for them? So to me, it's really about listening to what the needs are, because they are as different as the day is long. I mean, I could tell you 10 different brands that we work with directly, and I could tell you 10 different ways of working with that brand. And that's why, and as you guys know, and everybody viewing here knows, you can't be everything to everybody, right? No. That's a huge mistake. And so the one thing that I do communicate to my clients or even prospective clients is we focus on relationships, not projects, right? We are our business model is a relationship business model, which is why we have some retainer agreements, and we're starting to develop more of those with direct to brand, because I'm in it for sustainability, for the long haul. I want the next project that they, when they pick up the phone, I want to be the first phone call they make for the next project. And so, like a good billiards player, you're always setting up your next shots.
So would you be willing to share like how you do sales? Like how do you get into, but what's it like to begin the process of reaching out to brands? Do you do it cold? Is there some sort of initiative you put out there that you hope that people see? Do you do it through marketing and messaging? What's the trick there?
For me, it's sales Jeet Kune Do. I use a little bit of all the different styles and merge it into my own, which I believe in, leverage your strengths. I come from a sales background. Like I learned from some crazy old RV salesman. When I was 25 years old, I ended up in
But how do you find the brand person, like the specific person at a brand? Because brands, it's not like an agency that handles 8, 10, 12 brands you want to work with. You're going brand, it's going door to door. So how do you actually find that person to connect to?
Well, I've been able to, because of just, again, I've been in this business 25 years. I know I have a great sales team right now with my outside sales reps, West Coast, Midwest, East Coast, and I've got ballers in all 3 territories. And so their relationships with traditionally with the agency. So it's taking a little bit of the old style of working and then adapting it, right? And so because so many of their agency contacts have moved into the brand side, those relationships are everything, right? In business development, relationships are everything, as we know. And so it's about leveraging those relationships and those contacts as they migrate into this internal brand agency world. So
did you find it challenging to get your sales reps to understand what you're going for, like to pivot towards brands, or did you find it challenging to get your internal sales people to stop going after agencies and start going after brands? Did you find any challenge there to get that initiatives?
Yeah, they still do both. They still do both. Like I'll get a lead from one of my territories where they'll say, hey, I've got a Best Buy lead direct to brand. And then I've got, a Leo Burnett project coming out of the Midwest as well. So there, and again, there's been a lot of kind of commingling of personnel here into these different worlds, which is why we've never really exclusively said, hey, we serve ad agencies or we serve brands.
But did you find it challenging though? Like, did you find it like to get people to do something different and recognize go direct to brand, take a risk? I don't know what it would have been like, but.
Yeah, I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's relationships. It's not different, really. Again, it's about trust. It's about what are you willing to deliver to me? Can you provide the services I'm needing? And I've said this, and again, I get accused of oversimplifying all of this a lot because I'm able to really see each department and what its function is. And I'm able to kind of visually distill it down to like, here's what we need for that area. Here's what we need for marketing. Here's what we need for sales. Here's what, and there will always be a need. This is what's so great about our industry and why I love it, because at Fuel, we were doing mainly networks, right? Is what we called it back then. Then it became broadcast, then it became TV, then it became TV and streaming and has evolved. And then there was the whole agency side of things. And then of course we have this kind of third pile of the brands that have, blown up into reaching it directly to people like us. But there will always be a need to market products and services, period. That is the job security for us. If you're taking a bite out of that apple somewhere, you're golden. It doesn't matter the aspect ratio. It doesn't matter if it's going to be on a IMAX screen or if it's on a Nokia phone, right? There will always be a need to create the content and to market goods and services. Yay us.
Yeah. Like
James, let me ask you this. One thing that I'm maybe reading between the lines, I'm just curious for you to amplify on this. I'm hearing a lot of intentionality, that this is a strategy and that you are leaning into it, you and your team, that it's not so much of a, look, we do a bunch of great work. We just make sure that we get the work up on the website and we share the work and then we wait for the phone to ring. I'm sure there's some inbound, but I'm hearing a lot of outbound. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I created a thing when I came on board, not a thing. I created a sales system where I took all of the key stakeholders that have any role in business development, including the owners, including the executive producers, where we did what's called a 5 a day. And 5 people per day you reach out to, whether it's just an email or it's a text, how you doing, or it's a LinkedIn, so we do 5 a days. And if hopefully that's helpful for some of the people that are less sales inclined on this, that are being pressured to perform, is 5 a days. You can do 2 a days to start if that's helpful.
I remember PJ, when he was on the podcast, talked about that, and just that, I think what he said was, Joel, years ago when you said, just keep doing the right things and then eventually the results will show up. And there's those dark days when you're like, oh my God, I've been doing this 5 a day thing for a month and it's not working. I could be spending my time better. But I will say, if you listen to what PJ says and what you're also echoing here, James, apparently it does work. Like, it's a discipline, and there's something about sales that's just a method, and get after it, stay with it.
Yeah, the 2 most important things I learned were clarity, consistency, and discipline. Those 3 things are tied. I did this Harvard Business Extension, and those were the 3 ingredients: clarity, consistency, and discipline. And then the other thing is and we've all heard this, it sounds a little trite and cliche-ish, but out of sight, out of mind. Right. Sure. And if there's an email inbound from laundry sitting in there, whether they read it or not, they see laundry. We're here. We still exist. We're still going to be, we're not going away, and out of sight, out of mind. And so you don't even need the email to be read and go into your analytics and see who opened what and watched which thing. It's if you are in front of the client, they're going to be more inclined to go, oh yeah, laundry just hit me up. I need 3 bids on this. I'll make them one.
Well,
right?
Here's one other encouragement that I've talked to a lot of owners about in various programs and exercises and things that we've done. And one thought is, I encourage people, go look at the Fortune 500 list and throw it away. Now, if you're laundry, you've got a lot of potential, obviously, in that list. But for people that are wondering where to start, sometimes I say, look at the Fortune 501 and below at all those names you've never heard of. Every one of them would be a killer client if they're a fit, right? If they have a need for your expertise, if they're in your wheelhouse, what have you. It's just that we don't, we know Target, but we don't know the Fortune 501 company that is just like Target, but happens to be a lot smaller, still a killer client. And once you start thinking in those terms, it's harder to do your lead generation, reach out to them, qualify them, find out if they're legit. But when you find them, it only takes 2 or 3 and you've got a completely different portfolio of work coming in. Because once you start working with a brand, as I'm sure you can testify, James, it tends to generate a lot of repeat business. They are not one and done kind of deals.
And other brands and all that kind of stuff. It starts
Completely.
to create a magnetic effect. Yeah.
Yeah, I know we don't have a ton of time here, but I do want to sneak this in, and I'm not precious, or there's no trade secrets here. Like there's enough to go around for everyone. So if you think that we're all biting at a limited, a bunch of sharks biting at a limited sized whale, we're not. There's plenty to go around for everybody, and that's why I'm very transparent. I love doing things like this. You guys know I wrote a book, and I'm happy to communicate all of the stuff that I've learned because I love watching people flourish. Because they remember, oh yeah, because we all have the same interest here. But to go back to that again, I think the approach that you're looking at it from is not the approach I would take. I'm not going to say it's wrong because I don't believe in wrong. I believe in healthy and unhealthy. But what I would say is your perspective was to go after companies. I would say for me, I'm going to go back to, this is a people business. People work with people. They don't work with logos.
Yeah.
They don't work with brands, they work with people. And so what I do is I have a master contact. I've worked with Salesforce and I've worked with different CRMs and all that. And it just requires too much data input and too much upkeep. I want to be spending my time communicating with people. That's relationships. Right. And so what I do is I go off people. So I have basically a master contact list on Google with all of people's names. And if the company changes where they move, I change the name. The person is the relationship, not the company. And so I changed, okay, they went from LinkedIn over to Uber. That's just an easy change because I still got their cell number. I got all their information, the notes, the project I've worked on with them. And so what I would say is do what I do is go on your LinkedIn and you can build your own CRM and call it tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I take my low hanging fruit, which are the people that I know that they would break bread with me tomorrow if I asked them to lunch, right? There's the tier 2, which are the people I'd really like to work with, but I don't know them that well. Tier 3, that's my target list of like, God, I'd really love to be in at Best Buy, but I don't know anybody there. Right. So what I do is I go on LinkedIn, I look who knows, but I go in my 5-a-days, I hit my tier 1 people all constantly. And I always keep track of when was the last time I contacted them or when was the last time PJ contacted them. Right. So everybody on my team puts in the last time we've contacted them. So we're not doubling down and like, oh, don't send me that Coca-Cola thing. PJ just sent it to me. Right. So that's the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. But it's about relationships again to me. And so when you're staying connected and staying tethered to the people that are doing things in our industry, that are the deciders and the people seeking out creative agencies and studios and that sort of thing, again, out of sight, out of mind, you want to be on the forefront of their mind. And so that's
James,
my approach.
That's so golden. That's exactly, I love that idea of intentionality, purpose, and making the connections. That's when we use the term strategy a lot, but strategy to me is just making the connections in your mind. It's a series of projects to get you to the end zone, a series of people from person to person and get you to the end zone. You have to know what that is and you have to pursue each step along the way. So it's almost like a series of sniper shots than it is a big shotgun or machine gun fight. Just like get rid of everyone or knock everyone off. Like, no, you got to go specifically direction by direction, stone by stone.
Because I've done that where PJ or Tony will give me hey, I really want to work with this brand. And I go in cold calling and and I'm a persistent fellow. And so 7 to 10, I'm hitting people up on LinkedIn and I've got a couple of little luckies, but it's that's an uphill battle. I'd rather go through hey, Joel, I see on LinkedIn, you're connected to so-and-so. Would you mind making an introduction, a little Godfather pitch for me? That 9 times out of 10, your efforts will be more well received and there'll be a little bit of trust connected to that. Much easier. It's a waste of time. The cold calls are tough, in my opinion. Yeah. I think that's a long shot.
Well, I think that's really practical too, because everyone can just look at all their contacts and say, of all the people here that are at brands or closely affiliated with brands, can I make a tier 1, tier 2, 3, and start acting on them, start doing some 5-a-days. I mean, that's really practical. So thanks for sharing all that. Well, we're at our half-hour mark. So I'm going to basically say to everyone, this is our allotted time. If you need to run, that's fine. James, we might chat another minute or two just to kind of put a bow on it. But man, maybe you can come back to us in another month or two, and we'll just continue this conversation and call it an evolving, ongoing series of questions and answers and all this, and give us your ideas, and we'll hopefully have ideas for you as well.
I love it. No, I appreciate it. I love what you guys are doing. You guys are doing so much great stuff. I wish I had more time in the day to watch all of the stuff that you create and the content you create, but you guys have done so much for our industry, and I'm so grateful. And you know, thank you. And again, I think that, you know, there's a lot of, there can be some competitiveness with certain characters in our industry, but I'm all about, man, there's plenty to go around. Let's help each other, lift each other up, because if I don't have projects, I mean, I call some of my buddies, you know, I know a lot of people in this business, you know, and, you know, a lot of them came out of Fuel and Brand New School where I started. So, you know, I'll call guys and go, hey, can you take this job on for my client? Because I just can't, you know, I don't have the bandwidth for it. So I think we all need to you know, again, the more shared best practices we can, you know, talk about and toss around with each other and behave better, and hopefully our clients will behave a little better, and they can maintain some of those better schedules and better budgets for us.
I love it.
Yeah, all ships rise and fall at the same tide. I couldn't agree more. Awesome.
Yeah, there's some good karma being spread around there, and I think it's coming back to you, which is terrific. So look, give our best to PJ and Tony, the whole team, of course, at Laundry. Jason, thanks for all the hard work you do on behalf of Team Laundry. And Tim, why don't you sign us off?
As you guys know, we exist so you can thrive in business, life, and career. So we appreciate you being here. We're thankful for all of you for listening. And James, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us. We appreciate you.
Good to see you, James.
Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
You got it.
Bye.